hearing. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess of the subcommittee at any time. Under Committee Rule 4F, any oral opening statements at hearings are limited to the chairman and the ranking member. I therefore ask unanimous consent that all other members' opening statements be made part of the hearing record if they are submitted in accordance with Committee Rule 3.0. Without objection, so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that the gentleman from New York, Mr. Leilota, be allowed to participate in today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. We are here today to consider 4 legislative measures: H.R. 897, the Alabama Underwater Forest National Marine Sanctuary and Protection Act, sponsored by Representative Carl of Alabama; H.R. 3925, the Youth Coastal Fishing Program Act of 2023, sponsored by Representative Salazar of Florida; H.R. 5441, the Long Island Sound Restoration and Stewardship Reauthorization Act of 2023, sponsored by Representative Leilota of New York; and H.R. 6235, the Harmful Algal Bloom and Hypoxia Research and Control Amendments Act of 2023, sponsored by Representative Bonamici of Oregon. I now recognize myself for a 5-minute opening statement. I want to thank the witnesses for being here today and our members for their interest in the issues we'll be discussing. While debate in this committee can often be contentious and partisan, this morning we're considering 4 bipartisan pieces of legislation that do important work in helping restore and protect coastal communities, protect the environment from hazards like harmful algae blooms, and introduce the next generation to the nation's fishing industry and the marine environment. Across the board, these efforts require effective partnership between federal, state, and local government agencies and input from the private sector and other stakeholders. Over the 118th Congress, Republicans on this committee have consistently shown that economic activity and energy production do not have to occur at the expense of protecting the environment. Our coastal communities across the Gulf Coast, the Atlantic, and the Pacific are home to some of the United States' most pristine natural resources. At the same time, these coastal communities are some of the country's economic engines, driving industries like energy, maritime transportation, tourism, and fishing. The balance and direct relationship of these 2 interests, economic activity and environmental protection, are at the heart of the pieces of legislation we are considering today. For example, one of the bills we're considering would designate a 60,000-year-old underwater forest off the Gulf Coast of Alabama as a national marine sanctuary. This legislation would protect a critical resource, one that's been internationally recognized for future scientific efforts and other related activity. While the legislation includes important protections around the borders of the sanctuary, it also ensures that critical law enforcement and national defense activities, along with energy production that's previously been permitted, are uninhibited. It also is important to note that it was local fishermen who first discovered this forest, more proof that restoration and recreation can work together. Another piece of legislation being considered today reauthorizes the Long Island Sound Program, one of the 28 estuaries included in the Environmental Protection Agency's National Estuary Program. The Long Island Sound Program has been successful since its creation in 1985, serving the Sound's communities along New York and Connecticut, along with the entire watershed, which extends north to the border with Canada. This program helps work with local communities to deploy projects that restore the Sound and protect its coast, sharing the most up-to-date science and data while helping convene working groups of state, local, and federal partners. The program also helps provide financial resources to localities and other entities working on environmental restoration. The Sound is also a critical resource for commercial fishing. Montauk Point on Long Island is home to New York's largest commercial fishing fleet. Conducting important research in this region helps improve environmental outcomes like nitrogen pollution while working with vital interests such as fishing that are critical to the economy. We are also considering legislation that reauthorizes vital programs that help address and respond to hypoxia events and harmful algae blooms, events that occur across all 50 states, not just along the coast. The Harmful Algal Bloom and Hypoxia Research and Control Act of 1998 created a more formal, robust process across federal agencies to address these issues. NOAA has found that HABs can have an average annual impact of between 10 and 100 million, and the cost to respond to a single harmful bloom event can be tens of millions of dollars. In June of 2022, the Government Accountability Office found that NOAA and the EPA had made progress in developing plans to conduct research consistent with this legislation, but significant gaps still existed. By reauthorizing this legislation consistent with the GAO's recommendations, important reforms to consider additional impacts from HABs, focusing efforts both on the coast and inland, freshwater areas, and more consistently measuring progress, we can respond to threats more effectively, protecting human health and natural environment. Lastly, we also consider legislation today that aims to get the next generation of Americans interested in the marine environment, particularly fishing. Outdoor recreation, including fishing, made up 2.2% of the United States GDP in 2022, and exposing America's youth to those activities is critical to increasing participation in them. By creating a new grant program at NOAA to provide resources to organizations conducting youth fishing activities, we can encourage kids to get outside, help them make lasting memories, build friendships and relationships. I'm looking forward to hearing from the members that have sponsored each of these bills and hearing from our witnesses joining us today. Their perspective on the real-world impacts and benefits of these pieces of legislation is valued as we advance them along the way of accomplishing key objectives that will help communities that we represent across the United States. I now recognize Ranking Member Huffman for his opening statement.